In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a final expense sales script. Now, if you are in insurance sales, you know exactly what I'm talking about here when I mention final expense, and you will likely find this to be an interesting video. If you're not in insurance sales, you still might find this video and this process that I go through interesting. And what you could do is follow along and replace the product that we talk about with your own product or service. And you could use this same process for creating your own sales script, regardless of what you sell. That being said, let's get started here. And the first step in the process of creating a sales script is to start with the product that's being sold. So the product here is a final expense insurance policy. And it's basically a whole life policy. It lasts the rest of your life. It's designed to take care of your funeral costs, and you can certainly borrow money against the policy's cash value, and it actually builds cash value. And the rates never go up and the benefits never go down. So just some product details there. The next step in the process is to try to figure out who is the target audience that we're trying to sell this product to or communicate to. And for this sales script, we used people. And the next step in the process is to brainstorm the benefits of the product or service that you're trying to sell to that particular target audience. And our goal here is to simply brainstorm probably between 3 to 6 value points or benefits that this particular product can deliver to the particular target audience. Now, this can actually be a difficult step because it can be hard to take a step back and think about, okay, I know I sell this, but how does it help the different people that buy from me? Well, here's a trick. Just about most products and services sold can help in these 7 ways. They can either help to make something work better, make something easier, decrease the amount of time it takes to do something, increase revenue or income, decrease cost or expenses, decrease risk, improve visibility, improve access to information. So what we can do is we can look at our product and the different things that are included in our product, such as the product's features, and we can look at those one by one and say, well, does this help in any of these areas? And if so, how? A final expense insurance policy, we know that it covers funeral costs and expenses, but what does that mean to the person that we're trying to sell that to? Well, that can prevent that person's family from having to pay for their funeral. So what the product does is that it pays for funeral expenses. Well, what does that mean to the person? What's in it for them? Well, what's in it for them is that by them purchasing this, they will protect their family from having to pay those expenses. So that's the key benefit. Most final expense policies also help to minimize funeral expenses. And not only minimize those, but they can help to lock in those funeral costs. And when you add up all of those, when the person passes away that purchases this policy, if they have money that can be passed along to family members, instead of that money getting eaten up by the funeral expenses, that money can be available for their loved ones or for their family members. What we have there are 4 really strong benefits that we need to communicate in our sales script. So what we can often do as salespeople is get locked into just talking about all the details of the policy or the product and forget to talk about these other things. It's these other things that answer the question of what's in it for me. And that's what we need to talk about most and talk about primarily. With this sales script, we focus more on the value and then the product as a secondary to how we deliver those improvements and benefits. The next step in the process is to brainstorm any pain points that we can make go away for the person that we're trying to sell to. And our goal here is to think about, again, maybe 3 to 6 pain points that might be attention grabbing or might be concerns for the person that we're trying to sell to. And in most cases, when someone sells something, you can often think of a couple pain points that you help to address and maybe throw up a couple things on a whiteboard. But here's a trick. If we just came up with 4 really good benefits, each of those benefits can be used to brainstorm a corresponding pain point. Actually, it's an inversely correlated pain point, meaning a point that is actually the opposite of that benefit. When you help to improve something by selling your product, that helps to decrease a pain point or decrease a problem or prevent a problem or concern. So what we can do is we can go through our list of value points one by one and ask ourselves, okay, well, what's the opposite of that improvement? It's kind of like a yin and the yang. Try to think about what is the opposite of that, or what starts to go away when that is provided. Or if you take that benefit away from your customer, what problem could start to happen? So if we prevent the family from paying their funeral costs, then a pain point is that, well, when your customer or prospect passes away or someone passes away, what often happens is that family members can often have to pay a lot of the funeral expenses. And that can add up to be a lot of money and add up to become a big burden on the family members that are taking care of those expenses and those details. And now the next benefit, if we help to minimize funeral expenses, what is the opposite of that? Well, the opposite of that is that funeral expenses can certainly start to add up when you start taking care of all the details, and it can add up to become a lot of money. If this policy helps to lock in funeral costs, what is the opposite of that? Well, with inflation, whether it's just normal inflation or an increased level of inflation, over the years, funerals become more and more expensive. And so we have the pain point that funeral costs continue to rise. And if we provide the benefit that they have more money available for loved ones, the pain point is that funeral expenses can often consume a lot of the money that's been set aside for loved ones. It's very easy for individuals to put money aside and picture that money being transferred to the family members and all the different hopes for what they'll do with that money. But without a final expense insurance policy, that can all be wiped away because of all of the expenses of the funeral. And that's something that people aren't either aware of, don't consider, or aren't prepared for. So what we did here is we just brainstormed and came up with 4 really good attention-grabbing pain points that can help to motivate someone to consider more seriously getting a final expense insurance policy. And all we did was just follow the process by looking at each benefit and thinking about what is the opposite of that. And the next step in the process is to brainstorm questions. Any good sales script should have good questions to ask. I personally believe the best salesperson is the one that asks the best questions. You may agree with that, but we still might be at a place where, okay, but we don't know what questions to ask. Well, this process is actually going to help us to come up with what I would call pain questions. And our goal here is similar. We want to come up with between 3 to 6 pain questions. And here's a trick. If we just brainstorm 4 really good pain points, for each pain point, there is a question or 2 that we could ask to see if the person that we're trying to sell this to has that concern or has that pain point. So just by looking at these each one by one, if it's possible that family members can have to pay a lot for funeral expenses, a pain question is, how concerned are you about passing funeral expenses to family members? That's a great question to ask because, if you have someone who doesn't care about the expenses going to their family members after they pass away, that person's not going to be very motivated to purchase this insurance policy. But if you ask this question and get them to answer where they stand on that, that can help you to build your business case for why they should buy from you. If funeral expenses can easily add up to a lot of money, how do you feel about the amount that you have set aside for funeral expenses? If funeral costs can continue to rise with or without inflation, how concerned are you about the rising costs for funeral-related items? If funeral expenses can often consume money from loved ones, how important is it for you to leave money for your loved ones? So what we have there are 4 really good pain questions. And there's another category of questions that I think you should answer, which I refer to as current state questions, are questions that try to figure out what the prospect is doing in the area where you have something to offer. So if you sell cars, current state questions would be, do you have a car today? What year is it? Do you own it? Do you lease it? How much do you have left on it? How's it running? How many miles does it have? So each product or service will have unique current state questions. And one thing to help with this is that I have tried to organize a list of areas to ask about regardless of what you sell. And here are those areas that you might want to think about. Should I ask about this? But for example, certainly you want to ask if they currently have something in the area where you are trying to sell something. So do you have a final expense policy today or a life insurance policy? What type of life insurance policy do you have? When was the last time you considered other options in this area? When does your current agreement expire? Have you been hospitalized for anything significant? Any history of stroke or cancer? Any tobacco use? What's your height and weight? What type of prescription medicine do you take? So some current state questions there. I don't know if that's a perfect list or a complete list of current state questions. So take those for whatever it's worth. But those combined with the pain questions does provide a good set of questions for you to ask when you're talking with prospects. And the last step of the process is to think of a customer example that we can share in our sales script. I'm a firm believer that a great thing to do in your sales script is at some place share a quick customer example. You could either share at the beginning or at the end, right before you go for the close. You could use it in emails. You could use it in a voicemail script. So try to have a really quick, concise customer example. And we created one for this sales script. So you might have an example already in your head, but we do have a process to create a little 3-bullet blurb to tell a really quick story. And what we can do is we can use some of the stuff that we came up with in some of the previous steps. We can use our pain points, product details, and value points. So I just grabbed a couple of details. And so I grabbed a pain point that family members can often have to pay for funeral expenses. We solve that by selling a final expense policy. And this helped them to prevent their family from having to pay their funeral expenses and have money available to be passed along to loved ones. So those 4 details I can use to create a really quick, powerful example. So those steps, what those do is those help us to create what I would refer to as building blocks. So when you go through that, you end up with a value points building block, a pain points building block, pain questions building block, customer example, and whatnot. But once you have those building blocks, you can mix and match those to create your script. For example, if you're doing cold calling, you could actually just use those blocks and open with your value proposition, try to drive towards asking questions. Ultimately, depending on how the conversation goes, you might get an opportunity to talk about your product and the policy. So what you can do is just mix and match those blocks to create a flow of a conversation. If you scheduled a meeting to talk to a prospect about a final expense insurance policy, use those same blocks. And when it's the appointment, I like to open more with the current state questions. So you're going to open the appointment, learning as much as you can about the prospect. So again, it's the same blocks, but just in a slightly different order. We can also use those exact same building blocks for email messages. And so here's an actual email series that uses value points for email 1, pain points for email 2, name drop, email 4, some pain questions. 5, we start to get to the product details. And then the last attempt, email 6, I go back to the benefits that I have to offer just to make sure if it's something that they're looking to improve one last time before I walk away. If you want to know kind of how to use those blocks to either create your emails or create your voicemail scripts or how to bounce from one block to another in an appointment or in a cold call script, going to our YouTube channel, the Smart Sales System, Sell Smarter, Not Harder playlist, learn more about those different steps. That's all explained in these videos. Module 6 is on cold calling, and all we do in that module is just show you how to bounce from one block to another. We have a whole module on cold emailing, a whole module on how to structure and manage your appointments with clients. So those modules will show you how to bounce around. The hard part is just organizing those bullet points. And if you sell final expense, we gave you the bullet points that you can use for that product here in this video. If you sell something else, these videos will help you to brainstorm and put together your script, your sales message, and your building blocks and bullet points. In Sales Scripter, we have a library called Preloaded Messages, and this library is filled with commonly sold products and services. So you can see here, there's a general tab with general products and services like digital marketing, IT consulting, HR payroll, financial services, financial advisory services. We also have a whole tab for insurance related products. And there's products such as disability income, life insurance, universal life, term life. Here is the preloaded sales message for final expense. What I just showed you is in our software. And then when you go through our software has an area called the Sales Message Builder. This is actually a workflow of web pages that basically takes you through my brainstorming process. This is actually the Sales Message Builder loaded up with that final expense sales message and answers that I just showed you. So this is where it's all loaded up. And if you were to sign up for Sales Scripter and grab that final expense policy, then you end up with a sales playbook and a whole library of sales scripts and email templates filled in with that sales message. So here are some of the sales scripts. So there's a whole variety of different cold call scripts, appointment script, inbound call script, networking script, and all of these scripts fill in with those different building blocks and those different bullet points. And there's a whole folder of email templates. And so I showed you actually a 6 email series. That's right here. So there's a cold email thread with the value, then the pain, name drop, questions, product, last attempt. So this is a whole series of emails that fill in with those different bullet points, and it's all created for you. That's how SalesScripter basically works, is that it gives you a place to brainstorm and organize the key details about your product, and it uses those details to create building blocks, and then it mixes and matches those building blocks to create a whole library of scripts and emails and templates. And that's pretty much it. Hopefully this was helpful to you. If you want more help or more information, the best place to go is our website, salescripter.com. If you want more tips, there are plenty of videos and ebooks that you can download for free on our website. If you have more questions on the product of SalesScripter, there are plenty of demo videos that go into more detail on how it works and what it does and provides. And if you want to contact us, that's the best place to go as well. You can get our phone number, email address. There's a chat window as well. Anyways, thanks for being here. And again, we hope this was helpful, and we'll see you on the next video. Have a great day. Take care. Bye.